Morning, everyone. I'm Steve Wellbaum, and this is the All Sports Podcast, episode 6. Um, as you notice, we're not really in the right spot right now. Usually we're in my office upstairs, but today we will be in the basement. One, because a bunch of the people, um, uh, my neighbors are working on some kind of tree trimming or hedge trimming. I don't know. I just decided to let him be. Um, and we are downstairs for today. Also, because we have all this wonderful Ohio State stuff um, as a backdrop for sort of the Ohio State college football playoff special. Um, I've been wanting to do a special like this for a while, of just talking about what's going to happen the next couple of weeks going into college football. Because really, at this point right now, this is where I enjoy college football the most. So that's why I wanted to do the college football special. It might be a little bit shorter. We're not going to do any questions this week, but for all you Premier League fans, I want me to talk about the Norwich game for City, or the NBA fans, I want me to talk about Luka Doncic's win over the Lakers. I will get to that in next week's episode. But for this week, I felt like college football should be the thing that I take up most of my time with, just for this week. And I'm sorry if you guys want me to talk about some more college and college basketball and pro basketball and all this. It will come. Trust me, it will come. It's just college football and pro football have such a short season that I feel like I need to dedicate as much time as I can to it. And I feel like I shouldn't be skimping on any kind of detail for either of those, especially when they're so short and there's only so much to say about them. So let's just get into it. But before we do, you'll notice the Bengals won, so we're wearing the shirt. Very excited about that. Very happy they won. I was so happy I made a really embarrassing dance, and I put it on on YouTube, a video of me dancing really poorly. So you're welcome, Cincinnati. So very excited that the Bengals actually won. We're not going 0-16, which is great, but we're still in that spot to get Joe Burrow. Not Tua. But let's kind of talk about the rivalries that happened. The Minnesota game was very fun to watch. I switched over between that game and the Auburn Alabama game. I spent more time with the Auburn Alabama game, of course, just because it was such a big back and forth, exciting game from both sides, really. And in the Minnesota-Wisconsin game, I kind of saw this coming because it's rivalry games really don't matter. The thing that I like about college football is anybody can beat anybody on any given day, and especially during rivalry week, because the teams just don't like each other, period. So they have so much fire and intensity to go and just dominate this other team, which is why rivalry week, oh my goodness, that is so hard to say. That's why rivalry week is so exciting. And so the Wisconsin Minnesota game, I thought that Minnesota would not be able to take Wisconsin's running attack, and obviously that looked like it happened. Also, Jonathan Taylor looks like the best back in college football. For a while, I thought it was Najee Harris. At the beginning of the season, I thought it was Travis Etienne out of Clemson. And J.K. Dobbins has shown signs of being a promising back. I personally wouldn't take him if I needed a running back and he was on the board first. I would probably still take Najee Harris for his intangibles, but Jonathan Taylor, he's number 2 or number 1, depending on what kind of team I have and if I need a Najee Harris, like a very very big Derrick Henry-esque back. But that game was very exciting. I love that it was in the snow. I get like goosebumps when there's snow in college football because it's just so exciting. In any football, really. It's just so exciting to see them have to brave the elements and get really burly and strong up front, because when the snow comes down, the running backs come out. So you have to get really strong up front, and it was such a fun game to watch. Even though I would have liked to see Minnesota win, I'm kind of okay with Wisconsin winning, and I'll kind of explain my reasons for that when we get to the further on in the show. But it was a great game. I didn't get to see very much of the Oklahoma State game. I didn't get a chance to see it. I saw the Philly Special play. I saw some highlights from OU's team. And I'll kind of touch on this more later, but I still don't really trust Oklahoma. It seems like they were in a one-score game until like the fourth quarter. And Oklahoma State, really outside of Chuba Hubbard, doesn't have any stars. And I think Chuba Hubbard is putting up so much production because of the fact that he's even in the Big 12. I don't really think it's because he's this, amazing talent. I think he's talented for sure, but I don't think he's not at the same level as the other backs in the country. I don't like Jalen Hurts. I don't like the way he plays. He plays with this kind of flashiness, like he wants to put the team on his back, when really he doesn't have to. Because in the system that he runs, he basically just needs to get the ball out quick and be done with it. Either get the ball out quick or extend a play just barely long enough to get the ball out. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to force it into super tight coverage. He just needs to take completions, positive yards, and keep going. He can run the ball fine. He's a great runner, actually. But I would rather him not feel like he has to carry that team like Kyler Murray did, or I think he wants to be Kyler Murray, but he just doesn't have the arm talent that Kyler Murray has, and neither does he have the speed that Kyler Murray has and the mobility in the pocket. So I would never take Jalen Hurts. I think he is a backup quarterback in the NFL, but I don't foresee Oklahoma going far with him, because I feel like the quarterbacks that are going to be playing over the next 2 or 3 weeks are going to be just better, in my opinion. So Alabama, Auburn. I don't think this is a hot take in saying that this was the best game I've seen this year in college and pros. This was flat out so fun to watch. It was not pretty by Alabama, and it was not pretty by Auburn, but gosh, there was just so many standout plays from that game that I could just keep listing them off. the drive that Bo Nix had, where he had 3 amazing catches from his receivers, and then the toe drag in the back of the end zone, the behind, like, not even looking, Najee Harris pick 6 by I forget his name, but the corner for Auburn runs it all the way back for 100 yards. The 2 kick return touchdowns by Bama, and that great throw that Mac Jones threw to Waddle in the end zone. It was just, and that's not even to mention the 1-second kick. Oh my gosh. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. Auburn gets away with the dumbest, most like random magic in all of college football. And it's so funny that they get away with it, but also like kind of aggravating. If I was a Georgia or Alabama fan, I would hate Auburn. And God, that just, they get away with so much. Like the football gods are an Auburn fan. Like they have to be at this point. With the 1-second field goal. If you guys don't know what that is, basically they were coming into the red zone. Auburn was, and they were running they were just basically going for a draw play to their running back. And Alabama tried to keep him upright, because if he fell down, if he fell down with 2 seconds left, he would be able to get the field goal unit out. They didn't have any timeouts, but they could get the field goal unit out, have 1 second tick off with the motion from the judge, and then kick a, what was it, like 40-something yard field goal. It wasn't too hateful, but it was still a tough field goal. So Alabama was trying to keep up the Auburn running back. Auburn's running back fell down. It looked like the clock said 0-0, and then they would go into the second half. So it looks like it went to 0-0. Everybody's running back to the locker room. And Gus Malzahn's like, no. We have 1 second left. 1 second. And so they review it. They put 1 extra second on the clock. And because they got the first down on that run, then they would go to a stopped clock until everybody gets lined up. And then the line judge would give the signal for a running clock after they get lined up. So Auburn gets lined up. They're completely ready to kick the field goal. Alabama's ready, I guess, because they're all lined up and ready to go. Line judge moves his hand back. As he moves his hand back to signal that they're going with a running clock, they snap it, kick it, it's good, with 1 second on the clock. And the technicality in that is that when you go to a running clock, there should be a 3-second runoff, and there would be no way for you to kick the field goal with a 3-second runoff because of the fact that they had to, because it was a first down, there would be a 3-second runoff. But I think because they reviewed it, they reviewed the running play, it would have to be, they would restore 1 second back on the clock, and that was the point of it. And then they wouldn't have the 3-second runoff because they restored 1 second on the clock. So, and Alabama fans are going to be mad because Alabama lost by 3 points, which is the field goal that they had. So Alabama fans are going to get mad about that, but honestly, it's one of those things. It's in the second quarter. You got to win the game, you know? Like, Auburn would have figured out a way to keep up that momentum without having that field goal. It's just a little cherry on top, honestly. In the greater scheme of things, it looks important, but Auburn would have figured out ways to stay in that game if they didn't have that field goal. I'll kind of talk about the implications for both of these teams going forward. But Alabama is basically out at this point. Like, the rest of I said this to my family after watching the game, because we were kind of watching it together. Me and my girlfriend were watching, and I said to them after the game that all of college football will be rejoicing Auburn for winning. I don't think there's any possible way of Alabama getting in at this point, which completely removes my theory. My theory could be right, but we'll never know because they're out. If you didn't know, a couple episodes ago, I was talking about a theory that I had where if everybody won out the same, I thought that Alabama would get in. If everybody won out like they were supposed to and all the favorites won out, then Alabama would get in over Utah and Baylor and Oklahoma. And that was because the committee would basically talk great about the resume and say how great of a win Auburn is and how great of a loss they have to LSU, even though it was at home. And it looked like LSU kind of controlled that game for the most part. They're going to talk up Alabama and say they were in a one-score game. They blew out Auburn, if they actually did. And then they would have made the college football playoff because they're a one-loss team. So I would have thought that would be the case. Now I think with a 2-loss Alabama team, there's never been a 2-loss team period that has made the college football playoff. The only thing that I could see happening where Alabama could possibly get in would be if Utah lost, if Clemson lost, if Utah or Clemson lost, and they would basically count the NC State or the North Carolina game for Clemson as a loss, basically, because it was a one-score game and they really should have lost that game. They would basically they could make an argument for Alabama over Clemson. I don't think it would be a really slim chance, but it's possible. If Utah and Oklahoma lost and you had to put in a one-loss Baylor team, then you could also make that argument as well. Just because, I mean, Baylor, they blew that lead against Oklahoma, and I know there would be the ability to say, okay, Alabama's an SEC team. They played in the SEC. The SEC's harder. Auburn is a better team than Oklahoma, they could say. They would basically just talk their way into putting in Alabama. But that's still, again, another really slim chance of happening. I highly doubt that would happen. But I wouldn't put it past the committee to do that, just because they have an SEC bias. And I know that's going to be hard for SEC fans to hear. But I mean, Georgia and Alabama in the same. I mean, why not just give the trophy to the SEC champion at that point when you put in Georgia and Alabama in the same, that are in the same conference, that played against each other in the did they play against each other in the SEC championship that year? Yeah, they did. They played against each other in the SEC championship. Why not just give it to the SEC champion at that point? Why not just do away with the entire other 4 conferences and give it to the SEC champion? Give the college football playoff trophy. Anyways, enough on that rant. Auburn, Alabama, great game. Um, Very excited to see what will happen with both of these programs going forward. Um, I also wanted to talk about the Ohio State Michigan game. We had a big party for the Ohio State Michigan game with my dad going to Ohio State. I've grown up as an Ohio State fan my whole life. Um, so I was very excited to watch this game, especially considering that Ryan Day is never really he hasn't really been in a game of this magnitude with this kind of rivalry, like ever really as a head coach. The only game that I could say would be closest would be the Wisconsin game this year, maybe. But I think Michigan would definitely give us a test, especially considering that we were in the big house. And I wanted to see how we could take that high pressure environment, because really our schedule has been kind of easy for the most part, and he handled that perfectly. I didn't exactly like the offensive game plan from Ohio State. I think Justin Fields looked pretty flustered at the beginning of this game. I think he eventually got his rhythm nearing the second half, and when he came back from that really scary injury. But I think Ryan Day has been able to. I think Ryan Day is able to take this program into heights that Urban Meyer has never done before. I like what Urban Meyer did with the program, but I think the way he left put a sour taste in Ohio State fans' mouth, and he needed to put in a guy that he knew that would be able to play up to his level, and he definitely did that with Ryan Day. And I'm very happy that he's with the team. I could see him leaving in a couple of years to go into the NFL, just because he's been an NFL coordinator, and there would be NFL jobs that would be open. Trust me, the Cincinnati one might be more open than we think, and Dallas, and there's just a whole bunch of NFL jobs that are going to open up at the end of the year. There always are. So Ryan, very excited for him to see him go forward into more high pressure scenarios where it's must win from here on out. I With the game planning, I didn't think it was as good. I would have liked to see more. We kind of moved to this a little bit more in this game than in other games, but I still really want to see more screen passes and easy completion concepts. We really did that well last year, especially with the Penn State game. That was the best game I think we had in that regard. Just having players, because we have so many star players that if we just get them open in space, they'll be able to do whatever they need to do. So just as long as you can get them that space with some rub routes, some screen passes, some sweeps, and Michigan does this really well, and I applaud them for it. But I was looking at Michigan's play calling at the beginning of the game at least, and I was like, wow, I wish we could do that. But regardless, Ohio State got the win. Ohio State dominated that game. Their defense did not look as great. I think this game is a concern for Ohio State going forward, especially with the pass rush. Chase Young got chipped, double teamed. He was basically a non-factor in that game. Outside of the run game, which everybody stepped up in the run game. He was basically a non-factor in this game, which can hurt him going forward, especially when the NFL draft is coming up and Heisman voting is up. I don't think he'll win Heisman, but I hope he does. That'd be cool. So Chase Young definitely is going to have to go to the drawing board, per se, to be ready for going forward. I don't think he's going to need to be a factor in the Wisconsin game as much as some of the other defensive players are. Malik Harrison has to have an amazing game, and Tuf Borland. Even though they did play pretty well against Michigan, I think they need to play exceptionally well for Ohio State to beat the Wisconsin Badgers. And so where does that leave Michigan after all this talk of Ohio State? I think, first off, I've been saying from day one of this season that if Harbaugh goes either with 2 losses or 3 losses and don't make the Big Ten championship, he'll be out. A lot of people like to say the Ohio State stat of 0-5 against Ohio State. Now it's 0-5. It was 0-4. But he's also never made a Big Ten championship. Here's the thing. The argument that I've heard against for Harbaugh is Michigan is not really. Some people like to say that Michigan is not the college football juggernaut that they were in their beginnings, and that really they haven't won as Ohio State is a true blue blood college football school, and Michigan is a blue blood, but they're kind of like a Texas versus Oklahoma, where they have several national championships and the most Heisman trophies of any team. I believe it is Oklahoma. It might be USC. No, it's. I think it's Oklahoma. But regardless, way more national championships, way more Heisman Trophy winners than Texas. And it's that same kind of mentality that is circling around Michigan. But he hasn't even made it to the Big Ten championship. I mean, you still have to at least make it. You can't just go through and say, well, we lost to Ohio State. We're 0-5 against Ohio State. We haven't beat them in the last 8 years. We have one win over the course of 5 years with our head coach, one bowl win, and we only have we've never actually made it to the Big Ten championship. Yeah, we'll give him an extension. Take off Jim Harbaugh's name, and what do you have? A guy that hasn't been able to, from any kind of track experience with San Francisco, he's probably not getting along with ADs and with any with anybody in the Michigan offense or office. I'm sorry. Not really getting along with anybody in the athletic department. I don't think that he is. At the beginning of the season, it looked like players were giving up on him in the middle of the Wisconsin game. And I kind of saw it a little bit at the end of the Ohio State game, where J.K. Dobbins was just running all over the place, and his players were like, whatever, I'll be in the NFL in a couple years because I go to Michigan. So Harbaugh, I think, if I was the Michigan athletic director, I would let him play out the rest of this season. I'd let him play in the bowl game. Hopefully he could win a bowl game on his way out, and he can take a nice coordinator job with his older brother. If I was the AD, I would really have many concerns, because going into this season, Michigan was favored to win the Big Ten. They were favored over Ohio State. People thought, okay, well, the Michigan-Ohio State game is going to determine who makes it into the Big Ten championship. And Michigan has Shea Patterson in his final season. He's super good. They have a great wide receiver core. Their wide receiver core might be better than Ohio State's. Yeah, from the start of the season to present, they might honestly be better because Chris Olave is really the main target for Ohio State. It's just Michigan has so much going for them at the beginning of the season that there's no reason that they shouldn't have won the Big Ten at the least. At the least won the Big Ten. And so I don't know how you could keep him at this point. I can see Michigan keeping him for another season, but I just feel like you're going to get more of the same. If you're getting the same thing for 5 years, you expect that in the 6th year it's going to be the same. This is why Kirk Cousins is said to be not as great. He's kind of like the Kirk Cousins of coaching in college. Kirk Cousins, if you put him in prime time at an 8 o'clock game or a standalone Monday night game, you know what you're going to get out of Kirk Cousins. We just saw it last night against the Seattle Seahawks. He didn't win. He doesn't know how to win at prime time. At noon, when you're playing against a below 500 team, he looks like the MVP. So, and it's the same thing for Michigan. In the brightest lights, they don't know how to get it done against Ohio State. They don't really know how to get it done against Penn State. And this year, they got smoked by Wisconsin. So, I don't know how you could possibly keep him. But knowing Michigan and knowing Jim Harbaugh, he will probably stay for another season. Knowing the Michigan, they basically want to keep somebody in from Michigan, and I don't think they really have another name on the board that they can say, we want another Michigan guy. Ever since Rich Rod showed up and had a horrible, horrible time being the coach, they've always wanted a Michigan man to kind of take over that team. That's why Brady Hoke came in. And that's why they want Harbaugh to come in. So, Ohio State, Michigan, great game. Very happy with the Ohio State win. And hopefully they can keep that ball rolling going into the conference championship. So I kind of wanted to do some conference championship predictions and kind of help you guys out if you ever wanted to do some betting for those. First game on the board is the Friday night. Very excited. This game is going to determine whether or not Utah will make the college football playoff. Utah versus Oregon. Number 6 Utah versus number 14 Oregon. I think this will be a shootout. I think Oregon will want to put as much points on the board as possible early against that defense and play with a lead. Because the reason why Utah the reason why Utah lost the only game that they lost this season against USC was because basically they were in a shootout against USC and they couldn't keep up against a very fast, deep threat offense. And the issue was Utah would basically be dominating the game, and then USC would have a touchdown pass and they would be back in it. They would have some amazing deep ball touchdown pass from like their third string quarterback, and then Utah would have to respond in a long slow drive, and then their drive was stopped, USC got the ball, got another like deep touchdown pass, and then they're up by 2 scores. And then it's just they're not Utah is not built to play from behind, especially with their strong running attack and their strong defense. Huntley's good, but Huntley wants to be an option quarterback basically. He doesn't really want to take a lot of deep shots, especially with their best receiver being their tight end. It's just I don't see them going far if they don't show in this game. If they dominate this game, I think they can get into the college football playoff. But I am predicting Oregon to win in a 10-point game. It'll be 2 scores, a field goal, and a touchdown. I'm thinking somewhere, it's going to be pretty high scoring. I'm thinking maybe like 24 to like, what would that be? To 34 for Oregon. I think Oregon's loss at Arizona State really shocked this team, and I think they really want to do well going forward. And I think they will. I think they'll win the Pac-12 championship. I think they are the best team in the Pac-12, regardless of records. So Oregon over Utah, I think definitely. I would have Oregon winning that game. Saturday, the first game is Saturday. Baylor at, sorry, not at. I don't know why I said at. Baylor versus Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship. This is very exciting. A rematch between these two teams. Baylor is going to get out. I think history will repeat itself, not nearly to the same degree, but I think Baylor early is going to pull away and get a lead, probably a 2-score lead going into halftime. Baylor is a very strong team defensively, very fast-paced defense, very mean and angry. I really like the way that they're bringing a lot of pressures, and they especially showed that in the Oklahoma game. But I think history will repeat itself. I think Oklahoma will have some halftime adjustments. We'll get back into this game. It'll probably be at halftime. I'm thinking maybe 17 to 3. People will throw out Oklahoma, and Oklahoma will come back to win against Baylor again. I think Baylor they both have something to play for, because honestly, if they both win, then they could both, or if one of them win, they could possibly get into the college football playoff, because they're only 1-loss teams. So Baylor is going to be playing, and they're going to play angry in this game, and it's going to be tough for Oklahoma. I can see a lot of injuries happening for this Oklahoma team, especially on the defensive line and offensive line for Oklahoma, just because they're going to be so furious at this loss that they had, having a 25-point lead nearing the end of the game. So I think Oklahoma will win. My score prediction is kind of weird because it's never really easy to tell what the scores could be for a Big 12 game, because they could honestly be an infinite amount of points with how bad some of the defenses are in the Big 12. I would say probably it'll be a shootout nearing the end of the game. It'll probably be like a 49 to 41 kind of game. It'll really pick up traction nearing the end of the game. I don't know if it'll be that high with my prediction in the second quarter, but I can see it being a very high scoring game, especially with such good deep threats for both teams. And Oklahoma's defense, I think, is super overrated. I really don't think it's that good. And then I kind of wanted to talk about this game. It doesn't really mean much outside of the bowl, the bowl games going forward. Cincinnati versus Memphis. It's at Memphis. The American Conference is one of the only conferences where they have whatever the team with the best record is, you go and play there. And Memphis, excuse me, Memphis and UC faced off last weekend. It was a very close game. UC's quarterback Desmond Ridder was out. I don't know if it was an injury problem. I don't know if they wanted to rest him for the other game. I don't even know if they wanted to, if he was not performing well and they wanted to bench him. But UC and Memphis were in a very close game. Memphis squeezed it out at home. I think on neutral site, UC could win. But I think because it's at Memphis, and I know it's really hard to beat a team twice, but Memphis, I think, can beat UC. This will be really exciting to see a back-to-back matchup between these two teams, which is, I don't think I've seen this. I don't think this is going to happen all year. I know Baylor, Oklahoma is going to be a rematch, and Ohio State, Wisconsin will be, but I don't think I've ever seen a back-to-back matchup like this. It's kind of interesting. Well, I guess wasn't last year West Virginia and Oklahoma back-to-back? Whatever. So I think Memphis gets it done. I like the fact that they're having such an expressive and original offense in their kind of Wildcat-esque air raid system. It's really weird, but I kind of like what they're doing because they have an identity. I think they have way more of an identity than UC does, because UC is a power running team, but their passing concepts are all basically like, I don't know. They're trying to they should use more spread systems to work with Desmond Ridder. Either spread concepts or air raid concepts. Probably more spread than air raid, because then you'd have to change everything. But I would like to see more spread concepts and power running concepts kind of conflicting with each other and going back and forth between the two. But Desmond Ridder is kind of, he works off of play action all the time, and I don't think I think that might be fine for him because he can get some extra yardage with his wheels, but I would rather see him in kind of a doing a lot of draws with instead of like more. I would like to see more draw plays to Michael Warren, the running back for UC, and less of one in the backfield or two in the backfield kind of plays. So going forward, UC I think is the better team, but I think Memphis will win the game because they are at home, and their fans were loud, and they will be very loud at Memphis. The best game, I think, in my opinion, will be the Georgia LSU game. The winner of this basically gets into the college football playoff. I think if LSU loses this game, they could still get in. So every college football fan in Utah, Baylor, Oklahoma, are all rooting for LSU to blow the doors off of Georgia, and I don't think they're gonna be upset, because I think Georgia will get stomped. I think Georgia is not as good as their record says. I think Jake Fromm has regressed this year. Not to the point where I think it'll hurt his draft stock. But I just think that their O-line is not as great as it was a few years ago. They are missing their best wide receiver. Their second best wide receiver just got suspended going into this game. DeAndre Swift, their star running back, got injured as well. I just I there's so much going against their offense, and um and that is the thing that they needed to do, or they needed to keep together, because they're basically LSU from here on out is going to be in shootouts because the defenses are so good um, for other teams, and they're going to have to like keep up that pace that their high-powered offense has shown. So they're going to be in shootouts and also because their defense is horrible. So I think it's going to be pretty easy going for LSU. They'll probably jump out to an early lead at halftime, maybe 31-3 or 10 at halftime. I can definitely see that happening, especially with the Georgia defense that's not really had the same stars as before, with Baker and Roquan Smith holstering that defense. They're not there anymore. They moved on to the NFL, but I think that there's not enough. There's talent there for Georgia, but I just don't think that it's going to be enough to keep up with LSU going forward. My score prediction: they're probably going to coast their way through the rest of this game. They might even put in the backup quarterback or the second team offense. I'm thinking maybe it'll be like a 40. They'll probably coast in the second half, and it'll be a 41 to 24 game. Or not 24. It would have to be, 24. Yeah, it would be a 41 to 24 game. I think their defense will show signs of progression, but it'll also be because Georgia is not playing well. So to move on from the SEC, Virginia versus Clemson in the ACC title game. This game, if Clemson is like plus over 20 points, I would take Virginia with the points for the sports betting. I think Virginia will stay in this game up until the third quarter. I think the fourth quarter, Clemson will pull away. Everybody will be watching this game because it'll be so close between Virginia and Clemson. Virginia and Clemson have not played against each other. The quarterback for Virginia and that whole offense really is kind of built to mess with and confuse the Clemson defense. They really haven't played a mobile quarterback like Virginia's, and Virginia Tech had huge troubles against this team. So I think Virginia will be able to. They'll take the lead a few times in the first quarter. They might even take the opening possession back if they get the ball first. There will be lead changes in this game. I think Clemson wins it. I think people will. Clemson might fall in the rankings because of this, even though they would be undefeated. They'll probably still stay at third. But Clemson is, I don't think is the juggernaut that they were, especially on defense, losing 4 of their defensive starters from last year. So Clemson, kind of shaky. Watch this game because it might be close between Virginia. I think it'll be a 2-score game to end it. Clemson will win by 2 touchdowns. I'm thinking probably for Virginia, it'll be a 20, and for Clemson, it'll be like 20 to 30, 34, 33, something like that. So Virginia, definitely a sleeper, but Clemson, I think Clemson will win. And then the big one, Ohio State and Wisconsin. I think this game, it's really hard for me to say because it could go a multitude of ways because they know each other, they played each other. It could be a rerun of the same game. I'm hoping it is. Um, it could be Ohio State completely blows them out, which I would like that even more. I could see Wisconsin keeping it close, and I don't see Wisconsin being able to blow out Ohio State, but I can see Wisconsin keeping it close with their running attack and Ohio State's defense kind of being a little shaky since the Michigan game. Um, so, and I can see Wisconsin wanting to get revenge, especially considering that they were on national championship level play until they faced Ohio State. So I can see Wisconsin staying in this game. I think the most likely thing, well, it'll be a close game, low scoring game throughout this whole game. Probably it's got kind of the works of a 24-10 sort of game where Ohio State is it'll be deadlocked at 10-10 most likely. Well, then it would probably be a 27 to 17 game, I think. It'll be deadlocked at 10-10, I think, and then going forward, Ohio State will kind of pull away, and then Wisconsin will get kind of a garbage time touchdown. So it'll be close in the second half, but 27-17 kind of game. And it'll be closer than the score says, I think. So then, from there, the college football rankings, in my opinion, will go as follows. Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, Oklahoma, yes. Alabama and Oregon. Because of the Utah loss, I think they would be out. Baylor losing would be out. And I think Alabama, they really want Alabama to be in the college football playoff, so they'll put them at 5. It doesn't matter if Oregon wins super convincingly. It doesn't matter if Memphis completely destroys UC. That's what I think it'll shake down to. Oklahoma would be the only one left that could make it in because they're the only one-loss team. In case Utah wins and Oklahoma wins, I think as follows they're gonna put these teams in. They'll put Oklahoma in if everybody wins out like they should. If Utah wins and Baylor wins, I think Utah would get in over Baylor because Baylor... I think that Baylor doesn't have as much of an identity as Utah does. And Utah, outside of the USC game, really has dominated people. And that would mean that they would beat a really good Oregon team that the committee thought was extremely good outside of right before the Arizona State game, which I still think the committee thinks that Oregon is a really good team. Even though you could make the argument for Baylor. But if Georgia wins against LSU, then I think Georgia, LSU, Clemson, and Ohio State all would get in. If Ohio State loses to Wisconsin, I still think Ohio State can get in because they'll be a one-loss team. And they played Wisconsin, and they already beat them once. There's arguments to be made. There's really arguments to be made for any of these teams if some of the playoff scenarios work out the way they do. If LSU loses and Utah and Baylor both win, it's going to be really, or Utah and Oklahoma win, it's going to be really hard for the committee to not put in the conference champions and one-loss teams over an LSU team. It's going to look really bad for the committee if it works out like that. I think LSU makes it in regardless, but the committee's going to look really bad if they put in LSU. So Anyways, to kind of end off this episode, I kind of wanted to go into some bowling. The New Year's Six predictions. I think the Fiesta Bowl will be Ohio State, Oklahoma, and the Peach Bowl will be LSU, Clemson. Both tough games. I think Ohio State will edge out Oklahoma. I think it'll be a shootout, but I think Ohio State's defense will make enough stops to kind of silence the Oklahoma offense. LSU versus Clemson. LSU's offense is way better. They're gonna play in a great game. Dabo Sweeney's gonna is gonna coach his best game. Trevor Lawrence is going to regress, I think, just because he's never played LSU before, and he'll want to keep up with Joe Burrow's Heisman level play. And then it'll be OSU LSU rematch from 2008. And I would give it to Ohio State. I know I'm a homer, but I just think they're the most complete team in college football, and I would like to see them win, obviously. But I think OSU is more complete than LSU. So, but we'll see. It'll definitely be Fiesta Bowl, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and then Peach Bowl, LSU, Clemson, because of the locations. Arizona is closer out west, so it's more of a neutral site for OSU and Oklahoma. And the Peach Bowl, being in Georgia, is so close to LSU and Clemson that they'd want to market that. So that'll be good for the Fiesta and Peach Bowl. My predictions for the Orange Bowl. I'm doing these based off of what I would like to see, less of what I actually think will happen. We need to see what happens with the conference champions to really kind of grasp. But for now, this is what I would like to see. Virginia, Florida, for the Orange Bowl. Very, very exciting game, I think, between both of these teams. I like Florida's offense. I think they've really picked up some steam with Kyle Trask. And Dan Mullins is a great quarterback coach. He got Johnny Manziel to play well. Dak Prescott to be a great quarterback. He's done so much for a bunch of different teams. And I think Dan Mullins has really turned around that Florida team. I don't think Florida's as disciplined as some of the other teams in college football. I think they're one of the worst teams based off of penalties and basic like tackling. Honestly, the Florida Miami game was this year at the beginning of the season was. It was a great game, but gosh, the whole season, they're basically like Texas, where they can't tackle anybody. So in that game, in the Orange Bowl, I'd give it to Florida. I don't really have a score prediction, but definitely Florida to win that game. Virginia will play very well, especially early and maybe in the fourth quarter, but the third quarter, Florida will kind of run away with it. The Rose Bowl matchup, I think, will be the best game of the season. I think they will give it to Wisconsin, Oregon. The winner of the Pac-12 and the runner-up for the Big Ten. Wisconsin, Oregon will be a great game. I'd give it to Wisconsin. I think they'll be able to shut down Justin Herbert. And I think their D and offensive lines, the offensive lines are comparable to each other at Oregon and Wisconsin. I think those two O-lines are the best in college football. And Wisconsin's D-line, I think, is better in some spots than Oregon's. So I'd give it to Wisconsin. I could see Wisconsin having a 7-point lead throughout this entire game and not really give Oregon that much of a chance. The Cotton Bowl. I would like to see Notre Dame versus Memphis. I feel like Notre Dame being a 2-loss team, you have to put them in a New Year's Six Bowl. I am not a fan of Notre Dame, but I feel like they would be the ones to play in the Cotton Bowl against Memphis, especially considering that Memphis is it would be Memphis or Boise State would be the group of 5 winner. But I think Memphis had a tougher schedule, and they'll award Memphis with that with the Cotton Bowl over Boise State. I think Notre Dame, and I think Memphis could beat Notre Dame. But if I was a betting man, I'd take Notre Dame. I don't think their D line is as strong as it was, but Memphis, the Notre Dame secondary has been playing pretty well as of late, and that's what you have to beat Memphis. So I think Notre Dame will win that pretty convincingly. It'll be a 2-score game, two-score win. And then last but not least, the Sugar Bowl, which will be a great game. Alabama versus Baylor. I think both teams will be upset that they didn't make the college football playoff. I would like to see Baylor win this game, but I think Alabama will get his team rallied up, and they'll win the Sugar Bowl pretty convincingly. It might be a 3 or 4 score game in that, which might constitute a blowout. But yep, Alabama versus Baylor will be I think it'll be a good game. But I think Alabama will eventually pull away, especially in the second half. So, yeah, that's the bowling schedule. And this has been the All Sports Podcast College Football Special. Thank you guys for enjoying the talk of college football. I know if we don't have all college football fans in this, but that support this show. But I'm hopefully going to do this special for some other times. I'll probably have like a pseudo special where I go through all the bowl games once they've been announced and give my opinions on every single one. And I'd like to do this for some other things, especially when the NBA playoffs start, when the NFL playoffs start. I would like to do like some small episodes based off of those specific things. I'm just trying to get some new ideas flowing to kind of keep everybody interested. So thank you guys so much for watching, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, guys.